Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly webcast where I deliver some topical news and some possibly controversial views and even some better biking tips for you. We have a fairly news-packed show today after a couple of weeks when there hasn't actually been very much to say. All of a sudden, there's plenty to talk about. We'll start by looking at how the insolvent MC Edwards Insurance Company has actually cancelled bike policies as of the end of the month. We'll talk about MAG. They've had a positive meeting with TfL and they are also nationally targeting potholes as a priority. There's good news that the DfT has paused the rollout of smart motorways for 5 years to collect data. Hollywood gives a ludicrous four-cylinder engine noise to an e-bike. I'll give you the link to watch that. There's an early contender of the year for the daftest named bike, the Cyborg Bob-e. And we'll ask if the four-cylinder ZX4R is set for launch. Carole Nash, their bike shows are back in London. And if you're doing a track day, there's a good chance that you'll need a back protector. They'll become mandatory on MCE events this year. And we'll just finish off. There's a free rider course in Powys in February, and today's better biking tip on a morning which is just starting to break up after a foggy start is actually riding in fog. So settle yourselves down with a brew for the next few minutes and stay with me for the next 35 minutes or so. Don't forget, if you can't watch it here, you can always catch up later on YouTube or here on Facebook. And of course, if you have anything to say, I'm more than happy to hear from you. Any questions, I'll try and answer. Comments, feedback, anything you like, fire away, use the comment stream, and I will attempt to answer during the show. If I can't do it during the show, I will do it at the end of the show. And good morning to Nick, who's already looked in. So do say hello if you are around. Right, okay, so on with the show. Let me just get rid of the banner there, get rid of that, and we'll carry on. Right, okay, so if you are unfortunate enough to be one of the 100,000 plus riders who were insured with the insolvent Gibraltar-based MCE, that was MC Edwards Insurance Company Limited, known as MICL for short. They're now known as Green Realizations 123. They had sold a range of cover, including motorcycle, private, car, and van insurance, through their broker MCE UK, and that's causing quite a lot of confusion. Both firms were part of the same parent group, but the insurance arm went into administration on the 19th of November 2021, last year, obviously. Now, the insurer actually promised to honour existing cover initially, but that promise has now gone by the board. All motorcycle and scooter policies underwritten by MICL will be disclaimed, which effectively means they are cancelled at midnight on Monday, January the 31st. So if you have an insurance underwritten by MC Edwards Insurance Company Limited, you must update your insurance with another underwriter. Now, the insurance will run till that date, January the 31st, just 2 weeks away, but no adjustments will be permitted from this point on. Now, depending on which source I read, the decision was either taken by the consultancy firm Carole, who were involved in the insolvency proceedings, or by the Gibraltar-based Green Realizations 123, who seem to have taken over what was MCE Insurance Company Limited. So one of those two actually made the decision to disclaim those policies after they have examined the financial position of the company. So you must, as I say, take steps now to put new insurance in place, or you will be left uninsured. Now, the bad news is that policy holders who have paid for their policy in full or pay a monthly amount that will take them past January the 31st won't automatically get their money back. You will have to apply to the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, the FSCS, and they will issue a refund. Now, the bad news is that it could take months for the unused portion of the policy to be passed back to the customer. The FSCS actually say 80% of the claims made actually take over 7 months to process, which is pretty appalling, really, isn't it? So the problem is that that will leave significant numbers of riders having to find the cash to pay for a second insurance policy long before they get the refund for the first policy back in the bank. Now, one rider on a forum I was reading just the other day said that they just paid over £2,000 for insurance days before the company ceased taking on new business. So they're out of pocket by that amount for the moment, or at least the proportion that will be unused. So, but around about probably about £1,200 or £1,300 worth of insurance. And they will have to wait months to get that money back. And they're finding that quotes with other insurance companies are actually several £100 higher. Another rider with a 1998 BMW has been told that he can't get insurance through MC Edwards, the broker. So he will have to look for insurance somewhere else completely. And when that money is refunded, it appears that only 90% of the premium is coming back to you. So that will leave some riders significantly out of pocket. In the case of the rider I've just mentioned, who's probably due about £1,300 on their cancelled policy, it means they'll lose around £130. Now, this is just the latest episode in the saga that first aired on November the 5th last year, when the underwriter's permission to write new insurance was actually suspended. 2 weeks later, on the 19th of November, the company was placed in administration. And once they went into administration, that's when the FSCS, which operates what's called a fund of last resort, steps in and becomes responsible for paying claims. Now, under the terms of the FSCS's operation, first party claimants, so that is probably you if you're the policy holder, are only protected to 90% of the claim. Third party claims are paid out 100%, but if your bike is written off or stolen, for example, then only 90% of the value of that claim will be handed over. So again, the impact could be significant on riders. If you've just had a £15,000 motorcycle stolen or written off, then you would be £1,500 out of pocket, plus, of course, any voluntary excess you've agreed to pay. So, as I say, the latest position is this cancellation. Although few riders would have been aware, I certainly wasn't. MCIL had already disclaimed car and van policies, and in fact they ran out on Friday, on January the 14th. So, as I said, the issue has been partly confused because the MCE Insurance Limited broker is still trading. So, one other question, what happens to your no claims bonus? That's still not entirely clear. If you've taken out policies with MCE after the 9th of November, don't panic. They will be underwritten by the Sabre Insurance Group, not MCE Insurance, and you'll continue to be covered as normal. If you're struggling to find insurance through the usual routes, contact a broker that specialises in motor insurance policies. You will find that the British Insurance Brokers Association, the BIBA, have a find insurance service on their website. And don't forget, if you are affected and your policy is about to be cancelled, it's illegal to ride with no insurance. Right, so long-winded story there, but an important one, I think, to cover in some detail. Good morning to Sue, who has looked in too. Right, okay, so on a more positive note, the Motorcycle Action Group, MAG, who you'll recall that I write to their safety column, they have said that they have held a motorcycle safety round table, hosted by Transport for London on Thursday, and it was attended by a number of different people, MAG reps, Assembly member Keith Prince, the BMF were there, the Dave Bottomley, who is the Met Police Sergeant in charge of Bike Safe at the moment, and other key groups, it was said. So they said that the meeting gives grounds for cautious optimism. Now, a couple of positive things to come out of that meeting that I do know about, although I don't know a lot of detail. One positive step is that TfL will be providing a contact for the reporting of problem junctions and streets. Now, I'll try to find out who or where this contact is, and I will let riders locally know. Another topic that got a thumbs up from Mag was that TfL recognised that motorcycle theft directly impacts road safety. Now, hopefully that may lead to the widespread provision of secure on-street parking for riders. TfL also proposed a number of road safety innovations at the meeting. I have no idea what they were because it wasn't reported anywhere that I could see. But their chief concerns are around riders with limited training, the group that I have flagged up in the past on numerous occasions, riders on just CBTs, and also riders who are working as delivery and courier riders, including obviously the food delivery scooter industry, who of course will mostly be riding on CBTs. I get the impression from the MAG response that they weren't too happy with those. So again, I'll try and find out what they were and why MAG might have found them unappealing. And finally, MAG also suggested that the cycle and motorcycle design guides for London be combined into a single handbook. Now, that's quite important because not only does it obviously avoid conflict between cycle and motorcycle safety design features on the roads. Some things like those sort of armadillo rubber bumps, which sometimes delimit cycle lanes, have come under fire. There's been at least one fatal accident involving those with a motorcyclist who hit one. And personally, I think there are more points of reference between bicycles and powered two-wheelers than ever, given the problems that we all face on the road, and particularly given the blurring of the line between electric bicycles and electric motorcycles, light electric motorcycles. There's also, of course, the fact that this handbook, although it's London-centric, actually gets used by other areas. Now, I'm always cautious about shouting out good news, but although it's provisional data, the fatal accident total for 1921 appears to show a dramatic drop. No number was given, but the report says by as much as 60%. Now, I will point out that we're dealing here with relatively small numbers. The previously published TfL data for 2020 and 2019 shows that in both years, 31 motorcyclists lost their lives on the capital's roads. And that's a fairly small number. So if fatalities were down 60%, that implies around 18 fatalities. So that's 13 less, which is good. And TfL, in fact, says it's the best year on record for motorcycling fatalities. So I don't expect the final figure, when it's confirmed, to be massively wrong. But there are more questions about what has happened than answers. The number of deaths in 2020, for example, was unexpectedly high given the COVID restrictions in force at the time and the fact that there were significantly reduced traffic levels for much of the, several months of the year. That led to a fall in other groups of road users, but not motorcyclists. So why the drop in 2021? Well, Mag suggests it could be due to a continued increase in motorcycling in London. Now, this is a popular theory which has been bandied about a lot in pro-motorcycling circles in recent years. The idea is that as you replace car journeys with PTW journeys, you not only make the roads less busy and naturally safer, but the growing numbers of bikes on the road means drivers are more aware and more careful around those machines, improving rider safety. And it's regularly been used by the MCIA, for example, to promote pro-powered two-wheeler policies. But it's really worth pointing out that the data on which this claim was based, it wasn't actually real life experience. It was a computer simulation. And in fact, it was a computer simulation of what could happen on just one short stretch of road in Belgium, if I remember correctly. So it's an interesting piece of work, but it's hardly conclusive proof of the theory that more PTWs means safer PTWs. So If there's no obvious explanation, my guess is that it's simply random chance. And if that is the case, then I suspect that over the next 12 months, we'll see fatalities rise again. The name of the phenomenon is regression to the mean. Now, unfortunately, I know from experience what people will expect is that in 2022, the same low numbers as in 2021 will continue. And when numbers rebound, which I fully expect them to do, um, rather than say, as Assembly Member Keith Prince commented, I'm impressed with the dramatic fall in motorcycle deaths in London last year, the response will be the opposite. It will be something along the lines of something needs to be done to stem the dramatic rise in motorcycle deaths. That's the problem. Safety rarely takes the long view. Um, Nevertheless, I'm encouraged to see there will be further meetings scheduled to develop plans that were discussed during the meeting and to coordinate what's described as a cooperative approach to making London's roads safer to all road users. And if you think it doesn't concern me, remember what happens in London does tend to spread out to the burbs. Right, okay. Just to remind you, if you set yourself a reminder, Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, this show goes out. Normally goes out live. Very occasionally I do a recording if I'm busy doing something else. You can always catch up here on Facebook or head over to my YouTube channel, Survival Skills UK. Don't forget that all important UK on the end, or you will find somebody sharpening Boy Scouts. Right, well, what's Paul got to say here? Upcoming store and back protectors. I'll be on to that in a moment, Paul. Thanks for contributing that. We'll have a look at that in just a second. Right, okay. Meanwhile, another MAG story at a national level. Members of MAG last year voted repair of potholes as their second highest priority. And this revolves around the reports that 74 motorcycle KSIs killed or seriously injured listed a poor road surface as a contributory factor. Now, none of us like riding through cratered surfaces. We call them roads, but they are more like the moon in places. And as the report says, if you encounter potholes on bends, in braking zones, and at junctions, it can be far more than an inconvenience to riders. But let's put that in context. There were a total of 285 motorcyclists killed and 4,429 seriously injured in Great Britain in 2020. In other words, 74 of those crashes involved the road surface. That's 1.5% of all serious bike crashes. Now, I fully agree with Colin Brown, MAG, Director of Campaigns and Political Engagement, when he says our road network is a valuable asset, especially to those of us sharing the passion of riding motorcycles. The inadequate government investment in maintaining the network betrays a poor understanding of their value. It's high time that national and local governments sat down to come up with a credible plan to tackle the issue. Well, he's absolutely right. And he's also right when he says funds are stretched and innovative thinking is vital. I've had two rear wheels on my bike damaged. Both of them have got slight flat spots, presumably from hitting potholes. I've lost count of the number of tyres that have been damaged on four-wheeled vehicles over the last 7 or 8 years. I think we're up to about 7. One tyre a year basically written off by poor surfaces. That's appalling. But we don't really help ourselves by, sort of hyperbolic statements about motorcyclists, the surface being the difference between life and death. Yes, surfaces are vital. It's the only thing keeping us upright. But riders generally do cope with poor surfaces pretty well. There are other problems on the roads which kill far greater numbers of riders, and they need sorting first, in my opinion. Right, okay, anyway, another bit of good news. In my opinion, it's that the DfT have announced a pause on the creation of all new smart motorways until a full 5 years of safety data is available for existing schemes opened before 2020. Now, that decision was revealed on Wednesday this week. And it also pauses the future conversion of smart motorways, which currently feature dynamic hard shoulder. That's the on, off, on hard shoulder running lanes, which are sometimes running lanes and sometimes hard shoulder. They were all going to be converted into permanent all lane running motorways, which are claimed to be safer than the on-off ones. So if the work has been started, it will be completed. If it's not been started, then that's on hold too. It does appear, however, that stopped vehicle detection technology will all be installed as planned as part of a £900 million investment to improve safety. And the really good news, I think, is that 390 million of that funding will actually go towards creating 150 new emergency areas on existing all-lane routes by 2025. And that will increase the number of refuges that there are by 50%. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said pausing schemes yet to start construction and making multi-million pound improvements to existing streams will give drivers confidence and provide the data we need to inform our next steps. And I'm not quite sure how to describe this statement. I want to thank safety campaigners, including those who've lost loved ones, for rightly striving for higher standards on our roads. I share their concerns. Well, I don't know what to say about that statement. Anyway, smart motorways were given the green light in 2010, but significant changes were made from the original pilot scheme. That had refuges every 600 meters. In some sections of the new smart motorways, they're over 2 miles apart, and that's one of the biggest problems with those roads. Right, Martin has looked in. Good morning, Martin, from sunny but frigid Mongolia. I'm sure it is a bit chilly over there. I'm glad to hear it's sunny, though. Right, okay, so what else have we got? Well, as one website asks, motorbikes have been used by Hollywood in action movies for decades, so why do they still get it so wrong? What's the writer talking about? Well, what he describes as the biggest crime, which is dubbing the engine noise from a bike over the real soundtrack of the bike being used. The most recent fail, he says, comes in the new movie, The 355, which is a preposterous piece of fiction without delving too deep into the details. And anyway, it features a short scene where one of the characters jumps on board a Super Socko TC Max, which I'm sure you know by now is a fully electric motorcycle. The only problem is that what they've done is they've given it the sound from a 4-cylinder motor. You can listen for yourself if you want by clicking on the link I've just popped up. That's a short clip from the movie and basically takes you to the moment when the motorcycle's used. Writer Harry Fisher says, not without cause, that making an electric bike sound like a petrol bike is just lazy. So judge for yourself. Right, anything else to say? Don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, you can pop over to my coffee page. If you buy me a coffee over there, I'll be mighty grateful. And it will also open up access to hundreds of better biking articles, an example of which we'll be following up the show with at the end. I'll be talking about riding in fog, but just for now, the bike which won't sound like any kind of petrol engine is this one here. Let me get that up on screen. There it is. It won't sound like a thudding V-twin or a high revving 4. It's yet another electric motorcycle. And this one goes by the rather daft name of the Cyborg Bob-e. I suppose it's slightly better than the Cyborg Terminator, but hey ho. It's the second product of a new electric vehicle startup, Ignitron Moto Corp, and it's being released in India. And it's another bike with a sort of fairly modest top speed and range, about 55 miles an hour and 60 miles. The styling is slightly weird, isn't it? Sort of you've got that beak of a front mudguard, which is classic adventure bike, but then the the riding position looks more Sportster, so I'm not quite sure who that bike is actually aimed at. The press release suggests it's youngsters with an objective to elevate lifestyles and conserve the environment. Well, yes. So they say it's got a distinctive design to fulfill the style quotient and many more features that will make everyday riding easier and more convenient. And you'll be glad to know it's available in both red and black. And if that's not bad enough for you, take a look at this one, which I think probably qualifies for the ugliest bike I've seen this year. That is the Cyborg Yoda. It's their first bike, and it's an electric cruiser with a swappable battery. Now, the thing that you'll probably notice about this, if you look sort of closely, is that there's a sort of battery pack or which has been made to look like a petrol engine, which I have to say is absolutely bizarre, but there we go. Maybe if they've made it a fake V-twin, people would have actually gone from the Harley crowd to go and try it out. And then again, maybe not. So enjoy that while you can. We got a comment there. What have we got? Right, that's another one which I'll come on to in a moment. Now, you probably noticed there's been a dearth of news about petrol engines bikes. That's largely because there haven't been a great deal of interesting petrol engine bikes released, at least not ones that appeal to me anyway. But one that I have been following with interest is the new breed of small 4-cylinder bikes from Kawasaki. Now, you may recall that some months back the ZX225R was launched. That's a 250cc 4-cylinder, but it's only available in Asian markets, and we've not seen it here in the UK, and I suspect we're very unlikely to. But the word is the new 400 is set to appear. ZX4R. Now, it's likely that the bike would share key parts with the 250, tubular steel frame, the banana swing arm, and most of the bodywork, although there is speculation that the sort of nose cone could copy the latest ZX10R. The ZX25R puts out a claimed 50 horsepower, which is fairly remarkable from a 250. It's 200 horsepower per litre. It does it at 15,500 RPM, mind, with the help of ram air. And the magazines that are reporting on this new bike are speculating that the ZX4R could hit 80 horsepower. It won't have much torque, though, any more than the 250, really. Will the bigger bike appear in the West? Well, probably not. It'd be nice if it did. I like little bikes, I have to be honest. Some guesswork of my own, though. You'll recall that Kawasaki have been working on a hybrid bike which has a small ICE engine for sort of economy and for cruising, but is boosted by an electric motor to give better big bike acceleration, as well as for use in congestion zones, or emission zones, I should say. So here's a bit of speculation. Maybe we'll see both models in the ZX25R chassis. Right, now, date for the diary, and that's the Carole Nash MCN London Motorcycle Show at Excel. That's 11th to the 13th of February, so a couple of weeks hence. It's said to be a COVID-19 safe and secure environment, and the organisers promise all the major brands huge displays, including some exclusive bikes and some UK debuts. So it'll be interesting to see what turns up at the show. Plus, you'll get all the usual kit, clothing, accessory stands. One special feature will be a celebration of Valentino Rossi's racing career. 6 of his World Championship bikes will be on display. The 4 Yamahas from 2004, 5, 8 and 9, plus his 2 championship winning Aprilias from 97 and 99. And although the man himself won't be there, you will get interviews with key members of his crew and support staff. On Friday, there's a live running day. Just sounds like an excuse to rev engines to me, but hey ho. It says that stock and modified road bikes and full-on race machinery will be started up. Fantastic. More interesting is there'll be a live King of the Roads race on an indoors TT course with a Ballaugh Bridge jump. John McGuinness and Peter Hickman are team captains. Presumably they'll be on mini motos or something. That could be a bit of a laugh. With COVID numbers on the way down here in London, I'm hopeful you won't need the full ticket refund guarantee, which is promised if the show has to be postponed or cancelled. And if you still have one, the 2021 ticket will be valid. Whilst you're there, you may need to look for a back protector if you're a track day fan and don't already have one, because following on from last year's move to require front brake guards on all bikes attending their track sessions, MSV are now making the spine protecting body armour compulsory too from March 31st this year. It's a move up from their previous stance of strongly recommended, and they'll be needed for all their events which take place at Donington, Cadwell, Alton, SNES Brands and Bedford Autodrome. The directive says the protector must cover the majority of the spine and be fit for purpose, but it can be integrated or stand alone. And it says pit lane marshals will check for them when you line up for the sighting laps. So presumably they'll go around wrapping you on a back with a spanner or something. Right, as I say, it's packed day today, isn't it? A lot to talk about. Motorcyclists, if you want a free course, then head to Powys. Now, I really shouldn't tell you about this if it's competing with me, should I? But hey ho. Powys County Council's road safety team are providing some courses free of charge to any motorcyclists who live in Powys, or get this, actually just ride in Powys, and the funding comes from the Welsh Government, so hats off to them. The course will be the Dvsa's Enhanced Rider course, and as I say, it's suitable for all full motorcycle license holders who want to improve their riding skills, who are returning after a break, who have just passed their test, or for people upgrading to a more powerful motorcycle, or those who just want to check their riding standard. So you basically get a short online theory session, half a day practical on the road on a weekend with an experienced trainer. There's no tests, but riding will be assessed and training appropriate to each participant will be delivered. And of course, at the end of it, you get the DVSA's own certificate of competence. I'm never too convinced about the ERS. It's kind of DAS plus in my opinion, but anyway, hey ho, it's all worth doing. Dates are South Powys 10th, 12th, 13th of February, North Powys 17th, 19th, 20th the following week. So it's an online theory session and then a practical half day. Very much like what I deliver, in fact. Spaces will fill up quickly, no doubt. So you're given an email or a telephone number to contact, which I will pop up for you to read. There we go. Those are the ones to go for. So, meanwhile, here's another date for your diary. Don't forget the Science of Being Seen. The next live webcast is coming up. It's Wednesday, the 2nd February at 8 o'clock. And although I'll be doing Science of Being Seen again, this year I'll be doing something a little bit different. I'll be alternating the full Science of Being Seen presentation. So there'll be every 4 months, basically, with a more focused look at a particular part of the Science of Being Seen project. So the next webcast in just on 3 weeks' time now will take an in-depth look at how the eye detects objects in the visual field. It's an important subject. It's one that's badly misunderstood by a lot of people, and I will try to explain why it is that we can look at something and still not see it. So have a think about signing up for that. Even if you've seen the full event, I'm positive you'll get a lot out of this one. Right, okay, so we finally got to the better biking tip. As I said, we're going to run on a little bit today, slightly longer than normal because there's so much news. So a quick drink while I refresh my throat. Fog It was a foggy start to the morning. It's still cloudy here, but the fog has lifted. If it's foggy in London, it's probably foggy out in the suburbs, and fog can be a major problem for riding. Now, I still remember 2 trips in fog absolutely vividly. When I was only a few months into my riding career, I rode from Maidstone, which is in Kent, of course, to West Drayton near Heathrow. I set off on a lovely clear evening with the stars shining, and somewhere in London itself, the fog came down, and it got thicker and thicker and thicker. And by the time I got out onto the A40 heading out of town again, the visibility was down to literally down to a few meters, and I very nearly didn't make it to the other end of my journey. I was trying to follow the curb, trying to stay on the road, and I actually didn't realise I drifted up the slip road off the A40, and I damn nearly collided with the Armco barrier when the turn came up rather faster than I was expecting. The only thing that saved me really was, in fact, I was only riding at about 20 miles an hour because of the fog, and I was actually able to sort of swerve and stop. A few years later, when I was dispatch riding and rather more experience, I had probably the worst journey I have ever done on a motorcycle, and that includes riding in snow and ice. It was, again, a lovely sunny afternoon. I picked up a package round about, I think it was around about 1 o'clock in the afternoon from central London. And it had to go to GCHQ, which is out in Cheltenham, as I'm sure you know. It was a beautiful, beautiful ride out there. And I got there to Cheltenham just in time for the sun to be setting. So I was riding into this wonderful, wonderful sunset. But already I'd noticed there were patches of fog forming in sort of fields and in dips. By the time I turned around, it was getting dark, and that return ride was an absolute nightmare. It wasn't just fog, it was freezing fog. There were accidents all over the place, there were traffic jams, and I finally got back to London. I think it was something like about 7:30 or 8 o'clock. That journey back took forever. So riding in fog and riding in fog at night is probably my least favorite part of riding. So what do I do about it? Well, rule number 1, if I don't have to ride, I don't ride in fog. I don't even drive in fog if I can avoid it. But sometimes we have to do it. So what are the problems? How best can we deal with them? Well, the first thing is know your fog. Fog forms when moist air travels over colder ground. Now, we can encounter fog at any time of the year, but generally speaking, the densest fog tends to form in the autumn. November is actually the favourite month for fog, because you still get some warm air coming in from the continent, which can carry a lot of moisture, but the long nights, clear skies can really chill the ground. So it's a recipe for fog. Because the nights are long, the fog forms more readily and it persists longer, and it can even last all day. There have been some real foggy days when it just never ever cleared. But you can get fog pretty much at any time of the year. So the first thing I would do is check the weather forecast if I'm going to do any kind of long distance journey. Find out what the forecast is for the day. If it's slow to clear in the morning, it's pretty obvious when we wake up in it, like today. But the real problems are when we are riding on a clear day and it forms during the evening or night. So again, check the forecast, find out what's going to happen. Towns are generally a bit warmer than the surrounding countryside. So again, don't be surprised if you drive out of a town where it's clear into fog in the countryside around it. Think where you're likely to find fog, because again, it's cooling air which sinks. So you can find it in low-lying dips, around rivers, damp meadows, classic places for fog to form on still evenings. At other times of the year, we can find fog actually being low cloud. So we actually ride up into the cloud, and of course that is the equivalent of fog. Another place you can find fog is on the east coast of the UK, where you get a lovely sunny day inland, but the fog is blown in off the cold North Sea. Now that often forms right through the early part of the spring, even into early summer. Kent, for example, you often get those sea fogs, and you certainly do up in the northeast of England too as well. The M2, as it goes through Kent, you could get all three kinds of fog. In fact, you could get the valley fog forming. You could ride up into the onto the hilly bit, and you'd ride up into low cloud. And then as you get further out towards the end of the Kent coast, you could hit that sea fog. So the M2 was a horrible road to ride along on some days. Oddly, the M20, just a few miles inland, was often much clearer as a road. Be particularly cautious when you're riding into patchy fog, because you never know quite how thick it was. Now, I featured this on the website, on the one of the I think it was Video Nasty, fairly recently, with a car driving into what looked like some wispy fog, and within seconds it was so thick nobody could see where they're going. So everybody, of course, banged the brakes on, and that's when the crash happened. So slow down early and let other people behind see you're slowing down. Don't ride into it and then bang the brakes on, because nobody will know. Something else to think about: it's often cold riding in fog, so dress up warm. Put the waterproofs on too, because fog is moisture. It will get into your riding kit and it will suck away body heat. So the first thing to do to stay warm in fog is actually put waterproofs on. One thing that fog will do is it will fog up the visor on the outside. Now, if you coat the visor with a wax polish, I use Mr. Sheen, as I've talked about before, on the outside, what you'll find is that the water forms bigger beads. And what you can often do is just turn your head from side to side, and the wind blast will actually take the droplets away. But one thing I would advise you don't do is wipe across the visor. Even if you've got a visor wipe, you will find that you will scratch the visor and you'll write it off in double quick time, particularly if there's any spray around. If there's spray as well and the visor gets dirty, just clean it. I usually keep a little Ziploc bag with one of those pieces of synthetic fabric. I can't think what it's called now. Got one in the pocket here. There we go. That sort of thing. Microfiber. That's what it is. Microfiber cloth, and just clean the visor with that. I usually retreat it with Mr. Sheen. I have that in a little spray bag. You can't hold your breath as you ride, so that means the inside of the visor will mist up, and I've yet to find a helmet with a fully effective demister. So breath deflectors help, but I usually find an anti-mist treatment is needed. For years, I used Fairy Liquid as a courier. It needs replenishing every day. Dab of the neat stuff, just polish it in with a clean cloth. You can get spray-on ones, and again, you can get those in little aerosol cans, and they're quite handy, or little tubs even, because you can reapply that actually whilst you're out riding. It's a bit more difficult to carry Fairy Liquid around with you. Fog cities, lots of people like those. I always disliked them because I did a lot of riding at night, and what I found was they actually reduced nighttime visibility because they scratch easily. If you don't do a lot of riding, they're probably okay for a year. If you do a lot of riding, I found they were basically 2 weeks was about as much as they were good for, and then I had to buy another one, and that was expensive. Don't forget, get the lights clean and properly adjusted. Not just the headlight, the tail light as well. We haven't got a fog light on the vast majority of motorcycles, so do remember that your rear light is your only line of defense. If you've got your headlight adjusted too high, it'll simply bounce back off the fog. Same applies to trying to drive on the main beam. And be aware that you get dislocation in fog. Even a road that you know well, like the back of your hand, suddenly seems very different when you're in fog. Use all the clues available. Reflective posts are red to the left, white to the right. That helps you locate yourself on the road. And it also tells you what you're approaching. If you see a line of red posts, you're probably approaching a right-hand bend. If you see a line of white posts, it'll be a left-hander. Triangular warning signs, they're reflective. You'll pick those up and they will flag you up hazards which you won't otherwise see, possibly junctions or sharp corners, or something as simple as a narrow section of road that you won't otherwise notice. check out the center line as well. The longer hazard line is just that. Cat size, know what they mean. Colors, red to the left, amber to the right, white between lanes, green where vehicles leave or join a carriageway. And don't forget, they too get closer together when you're approaching a hazard. In general, where to ride? Well, normally I try to follow the center line rather than keep to the left-hand edge of the road, as I learned that problem, the error of that technique on that bypass many years ago. But be careful with crosshatched zones. You can easily find an obstruction in the middle of the road. The big danger is parked cars with no lights on. People will park in perfect conditions, and of course that vehicle will be unlit. Generally, you can see oncoming cars. Tail lights are trickier, fog lights are relatively straightforward, and don't forget the road surface is slippery too. Last tip, yeah, just make sure your bike's easy to ride. If you're focused on struggling with the bike, you won't be focused on the road so much. So what I would say is riding in fog is never fun, but there are things that we can do to make it a little bit easier. So there we go. Hopefully that'll help a few people with their riding. And if you want the next presentation on better riding, I will be doing one on Wednesday, the 6th of March. I have now got a link where you can order yourself a ticket, and I'll be talking in depth about group riding and staying out of trouble the survival skills way. So it's hopefully by the time we get to March, the warmer weather will be just around the corner, and with evening stretching out, it's a good time. The idea of this talk is less for experienced riders and more for those who may be thinking about running a group ride for their buddies but have never done it, or for those who want to do some riding with groups and again haven't got a lot of experience. I'll try to flag up the must do's and the don't do's and some of the pitfalls too. Right, okay. I did promise I would just mention that what's Paul got to say about the back protectors. There we are. I'll let you read that. Racing leathers, gloves, boots worn by solo competitors at the TT will have to conform to the PPE regulation. That's interesting, and to have been independently tested and certified. Okay, that could be interesting. That is actually very interesting indeed. Right, I didn't know that. Clive says he's been wearing an airbag vest. Yeah, okay, it's become second nature. And what else have we got? Right, okay, so that's presumably another. What's I've just missed one. There we go. Like the sound of e-bikes. Right, there's a bit of yes, I don't mind them either as well. They make a sort of an interesting turbine, sort of jet aircraft kind of wine. And what's that, Martin? Yes, okay. FRM regs for helmets are being applied to the TT. Right, okay, so some interesting dialogue there going on between people who know what they're talking about. Right, I've blathered on far too long today, but as I said, there was quite a bit of news to cover, which I felt was important to get over to you today. So apologies for the longer show than normal. I very much hope you have enjoyed the content. As usual, I'll just wind down by reminding you that the gift vouchers are on sale. They've been selling quite well actually this year, possibly because I've been promoting them more than normal. The good news about the gift vouchers is that you get money back basically when you buy them. They're worth more against the course that you take than they cost you in the first place. So you can order them via my coffee store just there. Right, well, that is it for another show. The next one will be on Wednesday, won't it? It's Sunday today. I'm just trying to remember which day of the week it is. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you have found the content useful. If you're riding out there today, do take it easy and stay shiny side up. That's all from me, Kevin Williams of Survival Skills. Thanks for tuning in.